Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled She Wanted to File a Complaint with the Manager About Me the Manager. I worked as a 911 operator for 7 years, during which time I was promoted to shift lead, which is essentially the assistant manager for that shift. During the shift manager's 2 days off, I was the highest ranking member. Our department B, C, we worked swing shift and admin was already gone for the day. We were super busy one night and the phones were ringing constantly. I answered a 911 call and spoke to the caller long enough to determine that nobody was dying, bleeding, or on fire before I put him on hold to answer another line. The second call turned out to be a drunk suicidal man with a gun at a family gathering, which took me about 15 minutes to handle until the police and EMTs showed up. In the meantime, there was no one available to pick up my hold. I finally get back on the other line and the caller is incensed that I would put him on hold after he called 911. I tried to explain that we had to prioritize calls by level of emergency, but he was not having any of it. I come to find out that he called 911 because a man in a freezer truck was going door to door in his neighborhood selling groceries, during our state's COVID lockdown, mind you, and dared to ring his doorbell. I admit, I lost my patience. I told him very bluntly that this in no way resembled an emergency and that we would not be sending police because the man in question was not violating any law. This pissed off my caller even more, and he demanded my name and badge number, which I dutifully gave. We are required to. And then he hung up on me. Not 5 minutes later, one of my probies, whom I had actually trained, lol, stands up from his console and says, "Hey, my name. I have a caller on the line who wants to complain about a dispatcher." When I asked which dispatcher, my probie hesitates, and then says, "You." So I pick up his line and sure enough, it's my crazy caller. I greet him by saying, "Hi, this is officer. My name, I am the dispatch manager. How can I help you?" I had to keep from laughing when he started cursing at me and then hung up. Found out later he emailed the chief about my unprofessional behavior. Chief listened to the call recordings, then emailed him back to very politely call him an idiot. The next story is titled I'm a volunteer not a refugee. I'm sure we all know what's going on in Europe with Ukraine. Living in Central Europe, we get a lot of refugees, so I decided to volunteer at a local airport. Let me set the scene. It was raining all day and it was cold. I had a hood over my head and a really warm jacket. I have never been at the airport, so I was looking around trying to find the coordinator. He hadn't seen me before. When I came up to the coordinator, before I say anything, he gave me a bunch of papers and started leading me through the airport. At first I didn't think much of it. I thought it was some necessary paperwork for the volunteers. As I was looking through the papers though, I got confused because the papers were in 2 languages, Ukrainian and my mother tongue, and they were requests of protection. I started wondering why would I need this. It finally clicked when the coordinator brought me to the checkpoint and the volunteers I came to replace started asking me about my living situation in Ukrainian. I stood there confused for a moment and then I blurted out, "I speak mother tongue. I am a volunteer." Silence. Among the people at the checkpoint I noticed my university professor. I said out loud, "I am your student." The other volunteers started laughing at the whole situation and they gave me a seat. My professor asked me what class do we have together and my name. He didn't know me before, but he sure does now. The next story is titled I'm actually your boss. Not sure if this fits here, so let me know if it doesn't. I, 28F, used to work as a chef at a multi-site, multi-million-dollar club, and at the time of this incident I was the head chef of the function department. Even though I was head in functions, I was still one of the top-ranking team members in every other aspect of the kitchen. So when I filled in the restaurant, I was still in charge. Most of my duties were based at our golf club, as that is where all weddings and VIP events would happen, and during wedding season one would not step foot in any of the other clubs. I should also mention that I have a unisex name, but people always associate it with men, so when I am mentioned in conversation people always assume I'm a dude. Now 1 year I hadn't gone to a main club in roughly 3 months, and during that time they had hired a new team member, and through the grapevine I had heard that he was super sexist and misogynistic towards all the female chefs, especially those under the age of 30. And treated all the apprentices like trash. One day I was asked by my boss to work a shift in the main club bistro as the McGregor vs. Mayweather fight was on and we were super busy. When I get to work I'm gearing up, hat, apron, etc., and he comes into the back where I was, and before I can introduce myself he starts giving me a tour of the kitchen. I keep trying to say who I am, but he keeps talking over me and saying, "There will be time for questions at the end," so I give up at this point and let him show me around. This goes on for 10 minutes and my executive chef comes out and asks what we are doing. This guy says, "I'm just giving the new girl a tour. Wouldn't want the little lady getting lost, and you know women already struggle with this job as it is." Cue my chef telling him that I was in fact his boss and had full authority to fire him if he continued to piss me off. Never heard someone stutter and try to backtrack faster. The next story is titled "My Driveway is Not Your Guest Parking." I get off work at 11 p.m. and once I got home to find a neighbor's guest parked in my driveway. I thought about calling a tow truck, but I was hungry and tired, so I blocked them in instead. I eat dinner and fall asleep around 2 a.m. I heard someone pounding on my door around 5 a.m. and yelling about work, but I was too tired to care, so I ignored it and went back to sleep. If you're going to park in my driveway, you don't move until I feel like you deserve to. I heard more pounding and yelling around 7 and ignored it again. I finally got up at 10 and I guess my neighbor saw me in the kitchen because he came over and started pounding on my door and yelling for me to move my car. Not my fault, your friends are stupid. I ignored him again and continued about my business. I left for work at 2 p.m. and my neighbor started yelling about how I was an idiot for parking where I did and it was my fault his friend was late for work. I'm standing there in scrubs trying to leave for my job at the hospital, and I told him that his friend was lucky I didn't have their car towed, and if I came home to a car in my driveway again I was calling a tow truck. He got mad and was still standing there when I drove off. The car was gone when I got home and it hasn't happened since. The next story is titled "Saying You're the Boss to Your Boss." So, this happened 2 years ago. Little bit of background. I work for a security company at a European airport, not allowed to say which, for about 10 years now. 2 years ago, I became a high-ranking supervisor. I am responsible for about 400 plus agents. Because of that, the law states that I must follow an additional course of 132 hours plus 2 exams to get my degree as security manager. Basically, everyone from supervisor to manager need to have this degree. The location of this course is at the training facility of the company, where all security guards of that company follow their basic training, refresh, specialized trainings, etc. And this is where my story begins. First off, one of the rules states that you should always wear your uniform when you do work-related things, like a training or course. One exemption is for the newly hired guards. They get the uniform after the first 2 months of basic guards from smaller companies, who work for a bigger comp, and people who do one of the manager courses. The uniform is a black pair of pants with a red-white shirt for agents, red-black for supervisors, a tie for the men that needs to be worn every time, and completely black shoes. No other color allowed. Important for later. I was there with one of my fellow supervisors, in our civilian clothes, and we were in a class with mostly people from other units within the company. It's been 4 years since we last were at the facility and things changed over the years, so we kind of felt lost there at first. After a few hours I spotted a friend of mine, Chris, who recently started the course for aviation security. I helped him apply for the job, etc. And I was talking to him, asking how the course was and some small talk about the airport. He explained me where the new facility restaurant is, as we were on lunch break, and then went back to his group. This is where the douche of the story, let's call him Kenny, walks up to me from that same group. Conversation went like this. Kenny: "Hey man." Me: "Hey, how are you?" Kenny: "You seem a bit lost here?" Me: "Yeah, it's all a bit new to me." And Kenny: "Where's your uniform?" Points to his own. "Never mind. You're scheduled for the airport, right? Did you do your basic already?" I knew where this was going, and I couldn't let this opportunity go, idiot, so I played along. Me: "Yes, idiot, I haven't received the new uniform yet," which is true, as a supervisor wears a different uniform. I hope it suits me. Awkward laugh. "Yes, I'm going to the airport after this course. I passed basic a while ago." Which is all basically true. Kenny. Well, I'm in training right now to be a supervisor there. Me. Oh, you're going to be my supervisor? Nice to meet you. Kenny. Yeah, whatever. Next time we meet, you better be in uniform. And wear it correctly. Got it, bud? Me. Yes, sir, idiot. I walk off to the restaurant and told everything to my colleague. We started laughing our butt off and went with our day. I texted my friend Chris and asked for Kenny's full name and what he was like in class. Chris told me everything. How Kenny was walking around like he knew it all. Constantly talked back to his instructors, and how he didn't give a duck about the uniform or the company's dress code. Really? Kenny also told the group about our conversation and how scared I looked. He and some others laughed about it, but Chris knew this would backfire. And how right he was. Idiot. Chris never told Kenny he knew me and who I was, because he knew I'd handle it. Fast forward a few weeks later. I passed my course the week before and just got my new red-black uniform. I was sitting at my desk going through the names of all the guards on duty today when I saw Kenny's name on there. I located his position and went to visit him. He was standing there at the X-ray machine, no tie, black and white shoes, and his shirt wasn't ironed. He didn't see me, as he was too busy talking with another new guy, instead of working. I talked to his team leader, who told me he already gave Kenny a warning today about his uniform, but he wouldn't listen. I said I wanted to see Kenny right now in my office. A few minutes later Kenny walks in, and doesn't recognize me at first until idiot. Me. Kenny. You said I needed to be in uniform next time we met, so here I am. Kenny's eyes widened and realized who I was. Kenny. Oh yeah, I was only kidding, sir, idiot. Me. Never mind, dude. However, let's talk about you. You're not wearing your tie, your shirt looks like, well, crap, and your shoes aren't the right color. Not only that, but you ignored your team leader, who I trained, when he warned you about the uniform, and you were a real pain during your training. You're also slacking off at work. How come? Kenny just stood there, looking at the ground, and mumbled something of an excuse. Me. I should write you up for ignoring your team leader, misbehavior, neglect, and slacking off. That's a 3-day suspension right there. But I'm in a good mood and, you're obviously new here, so I'll let this one goes for now. Okay? Kenny. Thank you, sir. I didn't realize it would be a problem, idiot. I'll behave accordingly, sir. Promise. Me. Great. And oh, one more thing, Kenny. Kenny. Yes, sir? Me. Make sure next time we meet, you wear the uniform correctly. Got it, bud? The next story is titled Traffic Cop Won't Let Me Park. This happened tonight, and I'm still pissed. I'm a stagehand, as I've said in previous posts. Tonight, I was working on taking down a show at a large theater where a tour was passing through. As I was approaching the venue, I pulled into the parking lot and headed for the parking area. I was driving up to our allowed area, normally reserved for VIP season ticket holders. I had a traffic cop step out in front of my truck, holding a red and blue flashing light stick up, so that I could barely see. I stopped my truck and lowered my window as he approached. What do you need, officer? You're not allowed back in here. You're going to have to turn around and leave. I'm staff. I'm allowed in. You need to go home, the officer said. I can't turn around with you standing there. The cop moved, and I just kept driving forward while he shouted at me. I pulled into our parking lot, and he kept following me. He got all the way to my truck, yelling, "You need to get out of here. You're not allowed to be in here after the show closes. I work here. It doesn't matter, you need to go home." I finally had to call my supervisor and have him greenlight me, idiot. No one else had an issue, and I legitimately don't know what happened. Maybe I just got there at the wrong time? The next story is titled No, This Phone Number Isn't the Disability Office. When I moved to my first apartment, I got a landline and a new phone number. This was in 2001, in the US, so I didn't have a cell phone. I gave my new number out to those who needed it. Every day, I would come home from work to 3 to 5 messages on my voicemail from people telling their SSN, medical history, employer, address, etc. All protected information that I, as a member of the public, would not ever need to know about someone. I called some of the people back, the ones who had left their phone number on voicemail, and they were very surprised to hear that the owner of the phone number was just a regular member of society. They thought they were calling a government disability office. I changed my voicemail message to be even clearer that it was mine and not the other place. I still was getting 2 to 3 calls like that every day. I looked up the office because I got the address of it from one of the callers that I called back. I called that office, and the receptionist was so surprised that the phone number they had at their old location was given to someone in an apartment. She promised to let everyone know, and I said I'd put their new number in my voicemail greeting plus give it out to those I could call back. She thanked me profusely and said, "So that's why people haven't been calling back and have been saying they called with information that we didn't get. Thank you for being an honest person." The next story is titled Karen Mistakes Teenager for Bartender. This is not my first, nor do I think it will be my last. As I said in my last one, my dad manages several restaurants in our area. I look older than I really am to some people. Possibly because I'm tall for my age IDK. This lady comes in late 40s, early 50s. She picks a table that hasn't been cleared yet, although there are several other open seats. Contrary to my last story, I wasn't wearing a shirt. However, I did have my dad's hat. He had to go grab something from the office, so he plopped his hat on my head and told me he would be right back. I was playing on my phone waiting for my dad when this lady coughs loudly at me. I look up and she points at the table. I was slightly confused and she's drumming her fingers on the table impatiently. So I ask her, "Is there something someone can do for you?" "Yes," she said huffily, "they can clean off this table." I look around and see everyone is at one of their tables at the moment, so I tell her there are several other tables open. She rolls her eyes and said, "Well, I want to sit in this one." My parents taught me to be polite and how to deal with Karens. So I tell her, "Ma'am, every server is busy with one of their tables right now. If you could sit at a table that's cleared, I'm sure someone will get to you in a moment." "You aren't busy," she snaps at me. I asked her, "What makes you think I work here?" She rolls her eyes. "That hat," she says it like it's the most common knowledge to exist. She tells me to go make her a drink. I tell her I can't. She glared at me and said that is ridiculous, and she demands I go make her a drink. I tell her again I can't. I tell her I'm underage and don't work here. She asks again that I clear the table and get her a drink. I don't have a problem giving someone a hand. Especially the people that work in the restaurant with my parents. I knew most of them well. So I tell her I would be glad to help one of the servers clear the table so she could sit, but I tell her again I can't get her a drink. She sighs, clearly very aggravated. I grabbed the plates and took them back and wiped off the table. One of the dishwashers who I have hung out with a couple times asked me who my friend was. He was joking and I explained she thought I worked here. He laughed and told me to make her a drink and see what happened. I raised an eyebrow at him, but he shrugged and told me it would be funny. I shrugged. I went behind the bar and made the only thing I knew how to, a Shirley Temple. I make the Shirley Temple and start to bring it to the lady. She has sat down and is on her phone and very irritated. I give her the Shirley Temple. She takes one sip and asks me what it is. I tell her it's a Shirley Temple. She asks me why I'm the world. I brought that to her. I told her, "You asked for a drink from a minor that doesn't work here." I paused and asked her what did she expect. One of the waitresses who actually worked there and could go behind the bar and make drinks came over. She looked confused at me and I shrugged. The Karen proceeded to ask if she was the manager, and she told her she was. The Karen explained my unacceptable, rude, disrespectful, frankly shameful behavior. The waitress backed me up and said I don't work here and she wouldn't have asked me to bring her a drink. The waitress backed me up and said I explained to her multiple times I couldn't do that. The Karen ended up having to pay for the Shirley Temple because she took a drink of it, and after she left, the waitress looked at me and asked why I gave her a Shirley Temple after finishing laughing. I told her it was the dishwasher's idea. Snitch, he had responded as we were standing near the window. My dad finally came out of the office and asked why we were laughing. I gave him his hat back and told him to stop giving me his stuff. We explained the whole thing to him. He found it hilarious. My mom, on the other hand, scolded me a little, but she was laughing too. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and post